How do you achieve the film look? For a long time, movies were shot on real film. Light passed through physical film stock, creating an image that just had way more texture, depth, and little imperfections that made it feel real. You don't see that look much anymore because pretty much everything now is shot on digital, and honestly, it makes sense. Digital is way easier. Because of that, a lot of filmmakers, myself included, are trying to recreate the film look without going to the hassle of actually shooting on film, and that's where film emulation comes in. LUTs, power grades, plugins, all sorts of software. There are countless different methods of doing this, but in this video, we're going to focus on just one of them, Dehancer. I'll show you how I use it to achieve a film look in my own videos that I'm happy with. I've tried loads of different film emulation tools over the past few months, and I'm being honest when I say that Dehancer is the way I keep coming back to. It looks good, it's easy to use, and there are so many ways you can use it and customize it. I'm going to be taking you through the workflow I've built over the time I've been learning how to color grade, as well as showing you some tips that you may or may not know which will help you out. A quick note as well, Dehancer sent me their plugin to review, but I wouldn't be using it or making this video and showing it to you guys if I didn't actually like it. Let's get into the video. Beginning the tutorial by opening a new project inside of DaVinci Resolve, I'm going to go ahead and drag my chosen clips here into the timeline. Now, the first thing I always make sure to do is head up to File up the top here, head down to Project Settings, and make sure that my timeline resolution is set to whatever the resolution of my clips are. The clips I've chosen here are filmed in 4K, so I'll select 3840 by 2160, that way we can see them in their highest quality while editing them. After hitting the save button, I'll head down to the cut panel, selecting all my clips and dragging them into the timeline so that we can begin editing them. If we head down to edit, this is where we can cut and edit our video, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to be going down to the color panel where we're going to be color grading our footage. Inside here, we have a clips button up the top which we can press to be able to select which clip we want to be color grading. For this example, I've chosen this piece of footage that I took in Japan, which I'll be color grading. We're going to begin by creating 6 nodes within our node tree. Now, to create a node, you can either right click with the empty node space, or you can press Alt S as I do. I'm going to press this 5 times so that I have 6 nodes in my node tree, and then I'm going to be naming these nodes so that the whole process is just easier to follow, and more importantly so that we don't forget which one is which. Starting off with our first and last nodes being our CST in and CST out nodes. The second node will be our white balance node. The third node will be our exposure node. The fourth node will be our saturation node, and then the fifth node, being our most important node here, will be the Dehancer node. Beginning with our first node, being CST in, we're going to begin by heading up to the effects panel and dragging the effect named Color Space Transform onto both our CST in and CST out nodes. CST stands for Color Space Transform, and it basically converts your footage from one color space in gamma, such as log and raw, to another, such as Rec 709. Since my footage was filmed in Sony S-Gamut Cine and Sony S-Log3, I'll be selecting those as my input color space and input gamma. For the output gamma, what I, and I think pretty much most professionals use, is DaVinci Wide Gamut / Intermediate. This is because DaVinci Wide Gamut and Intermediate gives us a much larger, more flexible color space to grade in. It preserves more color and dynamic range so that your adjustments don't clip or break the image. Head over to the final CST out node and then make the input color space and input gamma DaVinci Wide Gamut and Intermediate, then make the output color space in gamma Rec 709 and gamma 2.4. If you're on a Mac, then you should make your output gamma Rec 709A, as gamma 2.4 might make your colors appear washed and can also cause other issues such as lower contrast and lifted blacks. Now, the reason we have a CST node at the beginning and the end of our node tree is because this center area is where we're going to be working with our video within the DaVinci Wide Gamut and Intermediate color space. But then, after we've made all of our adjustments in this color space, we'll convert it back to Rec 709 at the end so that it looks correct on normal screens such as phones, TVs, and most devices. Moving on to our second node, which is white balance, the method I use to adjust my white balance if it seems pretty off is by using the vector scope. The vector scope basically shows you if your image has color tint, which is able to help you spot out incorrect white balance. If your whites aren't neutral, the signal over here shifts away from the center towards a certain color. It might look a bit weird and confusing at first, but after doing this a few times, you'll see it works really well and it's not that hard. You just want to adjust your white balance until the signal sits mostly in the center and you're able to tell that your video looks fine. By the way, I took these videos in Japan with a brand new camera and the white balance settings were completely off, which I didn't realize at the time for some reason. So if you're wondering why these clips look so purple, that's why. Now, moving on to our third node, being the exposure node, I change exposure using the HDR channel. This is because it allows me to control brightness more precisely across different parts of the image. I found that this is just the best way to adjust exposure rather than just adjusting the gain. You can also adjust the shadows, midtones, and highlights separately without affecting everything all at once in the HDR primaries tab, but I would suggest if you do try playing with these, you don't adjust them too much and you only make pretty minor adjustments. Otherwise, your video is going to start looking pretty funky and having this weird kind of HDR look to it. I actually never use these, and within the HDR color tab, I only change exposure. After we've done our exposure, the next node is the saturation node, but actually we're going to skip past this one for now and I'll come back to it a bit later. You'll see why shortly. Now, this takes us to arguably the most important part of this whole video, where we add dehancer. First things first, head over to the effects channel, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and that's where you'll find the dehancer plugin. Go ahead and drag that onto the dehancer node we have here, and that's it. Your video looks perfect and is good to go. I'm only kidding, it looks pretty dreadful right now. Don't worry though, this is just the default settings of dehancer for some reason. To sort this out straight away, what I'm going to do is hold Alt on my keyboard and click on the drop down arrow on any one of these boxes. Head on over down to the bottom, click on options, and then click on disable all tools. This is going to turn everything off and get rid of those crappy default settings, allowing us to work our way through everything one at a time, changing all the settings to how we like them. Starting from the top, click on the input section, and it's here that we can change our source to whatever we are currently working with for our video. If you followed along from earlier, you should be working on your video from within the DaVinci wide gamut and intermediate color space. So we're going to go ahead and select that, but if you happen to be working with a different color space, then select whichever one applies to you. Now, moving down to the next section here, we have the option to pick our film profile, one of the most key aspects to achieving the film look. Film profiles in dehancer are digital recreations of real analog film. They basically mimic how real film handles color, contrast, grain, and highlight roll-off. The awesome thing about dehancer is that it has more than 60 film profiles, all based on real film stocks from so many different brands such as Kodak, Fujifilm, and more. What's special is that these film profiles aren't just basic LUTs, they simulate the full film process. This isn't just going to be a basic color effect here, you're actually getting a much more realistic, organic, shot on film look, which is exactly what we're going for here. Personally, for my videos, I always go for the Kodak Vision 3 50D or 250D film profiles. These are just my favorite, and I know they're definitely some of the most popular ones that most people know. The next effect here is Film Developer. This effect allows us to adjust a few things such as contrast, gamma, and the colors of our video. I usually only slightly adjust the contrast by boosting it up a bit, and whilst you may be tempted to boost the color boost up a lot, just wait until we head on over back to the saturation node afterwards, which we said we'd head back to after, as that will be the best way of bumping up the colors in your video. The next effect is film compression. This one's pretty simple, but it makes a huge difference. I never usually play with the settings on this one. Film compression in dehancer basically softens how the brightness in your video is handled, especially in highlights. It gently rolls off bright areas instead of clipping them harshly like digital often does. This gives a much smoother, more natural contrast that feels closer to real film. Like I said, I always turn this on, but I never adjust the settings. The only time you'll find me adjusting it is if my video clip has a bright sky and I want to boost the film compression a bit more to deal with it. I think it's fine how it is though, and it's a really great effect. Now you see the next option we have here is expand, but we're going to briefly skip over this one and come straight back to it. But first, we're going to enable the print options effect. This effect, in my opinion, makes the biggest difference to how my videos look out of anything, and you'll notice a huge impact straight away. The profile I always select is Kodak 2383. Print options in dehancer simulate how a film negative is turned into a final printed image. They add contrast, adjust colors, and create smoother highlight roll-off. The different print stocks, such as Kodak and Fujifilm, give slightly different color styles and results. Overall, they make your footage feel more finished and closer to real film. This is definitely one of my favorite effects within dehancer, and it's always such a great feeling coming up to this step when I'm color grading my videos. Just enabling this effect and seeing the difference, I don't know, it's just so satisfying for some reason. After choosing your print options, you can head right back up to the expand effect, which we just skipped over. This just allows you to adjust the black point and the white point in your video. I usually bump the black point up ever so slightly. The reason we do this after our print option is because enabling the print profile can boost the contrast of our image quite a bit. If you end up adjusting your black point to a point you're happy with beforehand, then applying your print profile after, your image could have crushing blacks and just too much contrast. After this point forward, everything is pretty straightforward. The next effect we have is film grain. Film grain in Dehancer isn't like any typical grain overlay. Dehancer film grain is designed to simulate the random silver halide texture found in real film stock. Dehancer's grain reacts to brightness, color, and image detail more like actual scanned film, thus being why it's my favorite way of adding grain onto my videos for a much more authentic feeling film look. There are a few options here depending on what type of look you want to go with, ranging from pretty subtle to extreme film grain. The next effect is halation. Not too much to mess with here. I think the Dehancer halation is pretty nice. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I usually enable it and then turn it down to 45 since I personally feel like the default 70 is just a bit much for me. I know a lot of people absolutely love halation there and just can't get enough of it, but for me, I personally prefer it a bit lower. Under the halation effect, we have bloom. Once again, not a whole lot to mess around with here. You can adjust the settings using Dehancer's different default setting options according to which one you think looks best, but I keep this one at default and then once again lower it very slightly to 40 instead of 50. Film damage is something I'll turn on depending on what type of video I'm going for, but for this one, I'm not going to be turning it on. Overscan is a super neat effect in Dehancer. I've seen tons of videos with this effect enabled. I use it occasionally, but it's usually not the type of style I'm going for with my videos. However, I have seen loads of people who use this effect on pretty much all their videos. It's nice how Dehancer has so many different options for you to pick from as well, such as 8mm film, 35mm film. There's way more options than that as well. You can pick one you like and it's great for Instagram. And finally, we have the vignette effect. Also not a lot to cover with this one. I think most people know what this does. If you don't though, it basically adds a nice subtle shadow around the edges of your video to draw attention to the center of the frame. I always turn this one on and then just lower it very slightly for a more natural look. Opening the monitor section and quickly turning on clipping indication allows you to see whether your blacks are clipping in your video. If they are, you'll be able to tell as the clipping areas will be highlighted blue. If you do have clipping areas, you can just increase your black point. Make sure that after you've checked, you turn off the clipping indication option, as when you render your videos, they will render with the blue clipping indication over them. Trust me, I've made this painful mistake before, and I've had to render every video again after realizing I left clipping indication turned on every single one. Yeah, it was pretty painful. And just like that, we're finished with our Dehancer node, and we're almost completely finished with color grading our clip. Now, there's only one last thing we need to do, which we said we'd come back to before, the saturation node. But before we head back to that, I just want to touch on something that's pretty cool. Dehancer also now has an iOS app, and it's actually way more capable than you would expect from a mobile app. Everything we've been doing here in DaVinci with the plugin, the film profiles, grain, halation, bloom, film compression, vignette, all of that is in the iOS app as well. This includes, as we covered before, the same 60+ film stocks from Kodak, Fujifilms, Ilford, and more. If you happen to be someone who shoots videos from their iPhone, it actually supports Apple Log and log profiles from Sony, Canon, and Blackmagic. So unlike other apps where you're just slapping a filter onto your videos, with the Dehancer app, you're able to actually do proper color grading from a log source right on your iPhone. If you're already familiar with Dehancer, what's really sick about the app is that it breaks everything down into the same individual tools that we've been using here. So if you've been following along with this video, the iOS app is going to feel really familiar to you. You toggle each effect on and off, you pick your film profile, your print paper, it genuinely feels like the same thing, but just in your pocket. They also just dropped version 6.0, which was a complete rebuild of the app, with a new interface, a project system, and also batch editing, which is huge if you're coming back from a trip and want to apply the same look across a whole shoot at once. So if you ever want to do a quick grade on the go without opening DaVinci, and you also happen to be someone who does a lot of filming on their iPhone, then I definitely suggest checking it out. Now, moving back to the saturation node, what we're going to do is go ahead and right click on the node, hover over color space, and then select HSV. Then right click on the node once again and head down to channels, disabling both channel 1 and channel 3, leaving only channel 2 turned on. Now, you'll see that if we head over to our game wheel and turn it up in the primary color wheels, only our video's saturation will be affected. This method gives us much finer control and gives us a more natural looking result. The normal saturation slider increases every color in the image evenly, which can make our footage look overly digital and cause certain colors and skin tones to become too intense very quickly. By using HSV saturation through the game wheel, the saturation rolls very smoothly and organically, helping us preserve a cleaner and more cinematic image. And now, the video is finished and completely colored. As you can see, by selecting all the nodes and pressing Alt-D on my keyboard, the before and after comparison is extremely significant. After following this workflow, I was able to take this purple, dull, digital looking footage and achieve a great looking film look, with the biggest contribution here being from our plugin, Dehancer. And that is everything. That is my complete Dehancer workflow from start to finish. I really hope that this video taught you guys something new. If you want to see more videos like this, it would mean the world to me if you subscribe. It genuinely helps me out more than most people realize. Just a quick note as well, Dehancer did reach out to me for this video, but I want to be transparent. They specifically asked me for an honest review with criticism that can help them improve. I'm not just saying it's great because they asked me or paid me to. This whole workflow is what I use in all of my projects, and it's what I've built from learning color grading over the last few months, and I still have so much to learn. If you want to try out Dehancer for yourself, use code Asher when you're checking out on dehancer.com for 10% off. I'll leave the link down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.